Hello, and welcome to True Hollywood Story Unions Edition. We are going to investigate the evolution of unions in America's history. We will take you back to the hard times of laborers before unions were created to present-day life as a union member. Enjoy. Life in a textile mill was also very rough before unions were created in the South.
Hello, Lucille. How are you doing today?
Howdy, McCanns. Well, to tell you the truth, I'm a little blue today because I've just been fired.
Why? What happened?
Well, I didn't like my boss and he didn't like me either, so I stood up to him and asked for better working conditions, and he threw my ass out of that mill.
I'm sorry to hear that, Lucille. Do you think if you had been a part of a union that you wouldn't have been fired?
What's a union? I never heard of one of those.
A union is a work organization created to use collective bargaining power of its members to secure favorable wages and conditions.
That doesn't sound like it would ever work. My friends would never do that. They're a bunch of scaredy cats. They won't ever stand up to that boss of ours.
I think it's worth a shot. Lucille? Lucille!
Oh, sorry. Temporary deafness. It happens to us all the time.
Lucille, I think it's worth a shot, just to try to convince everyone it will be beneficial in the end.
Unions have revolutionized the lives of workers throughout American history. Unions are organizations of workers joined to protect their common interests and improve their working conditions. We will take you back to the life of Chinese workers who were excluded from early unions. The National Labor Union was created in 1866 and represented a large amount of workers. The union had 600,000 members, including skilled and unskilled workers, but they excluded the Chinese. The National Labor Union lasted 6 years, and throughout those years made minimal efforts to include women and blacks. Imagine working from dawn to dusk, chiseling away at the high Sierras to lay down railroad tracks. Hundreds of Chinese laborers lost their lives in premature explosions and other mishaps from the years 1865 to 1869. One might ask themselves if life would have been different if they had been part of a union.
I remember stories that my parents told me of his hard times working in the Sierra Nevadas. I recall one story about how after all of his hard work, he and his people were excluded from the American society and were discriminated against. He described his coworkers as being expendable and at any moment they could be discharged from their work or killed. I remember hearing that he felt as though it was hard to make friends because every man was for himself and no one could be counted on for being back the next day. If unions had been created during the time my great-grandfather was working in America, his life would have been so much better because he could depend on always getting his pay and being treated equal and have good working conditions. His employers were off making millions because of the work that he did.
By 1872, there were several 100,000 organized workers and over 30 national unions. These unions represented bricklayers, typesetters, and shoemakers. The Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers was nearly bankrupt in the early 1900s, but the new president, William J. Bowen, helped restore this early union.
I was elected president of the Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers in 1904. By then, the BAC was nearly bankrupt because of the depression that began in the 1870s. I helped create the union's first Widows Pension Fund and the Strike Fund.
The most well-known union of its time was the American Federation of Laborers. This union was run by Samuel Gompers, a Jewish immigrant from England. He grew up in a poor family and worked on a cigar factory most of his life. He was put on a blacklist by his employers because no one wanted to hire him in fear of demands for better working conditions.
I was elected the president of the AFL from 1886 to 1924 with the exception of 1 year. I supported improved conditions for all and tried to achieve these goals by collective bargaining, strikes, and work slowdowns. All I wanted was more. I promoted what I called a pure and simple unionism. I sought for better wages, hours, and working conditions. One of my major goals was the trade agreement.
I've received many working benefits as a member of the AFL. When some of the union members don't agree with the hours that our employers give us, we go on strike. We fight for collective bargaining, which is a bargain for everyone, not just individuals.
As an unskilled worker, I am not part of the AFL. I am not allowed to receive the benefits that skilled workers receive from being a member of that union. My working conditions are poor compared to those that are union members, which isn't fair. Just because they are skilled, unlike myself, they are able to join together in hopes of better working conditions.
Over time, unions have accepted more members in hopes of creating stability for the lives of the working class. Although unions discriminated against certain ethnicities and gender, nowadays all those that are eligible to be a part of a union are able to do so. The most known union of today is the Teachers Union. These unions have the power to better their lives by joining together to make change.
Sorry, I was just enjoying a good book.
What union are you a part of?
I'm part of the AEA, the American Education Association Union, and the Avon Union.
Do you like being part of a union?
As a teacher, you don't really have a choice. I enjoy being part of it, I guess.
What union are you a part of?
I belong to the National Education Association.
Do you like being in a union?
I think a union offers protection, provides collective bargaining opportunities, and prevents workers from being exploited.
What benefits do you receive from being part of a union?
I suppose the big ones are the collective bargaining agreements that the union negotiates with the Board of Education applies to me, and also the if I ever needed representation, if the town was trying to fire me or something like that, and I thought it was unfair, the union would represent me.
Why do you dislike the union?
Well, I think that to some extent that the union does protect incompetent teachers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, have you heard that before?
No.
You know, I mean, I think that it's very hard to fire an incompetent teacher, and I think a lot of that is because of the protections that the union has created. Again, you know, there's benefits to having the union and all that, but yeah, I think it does protect people who probably shouldn't be teaching.
Would you rather be an entrepreneur and take business risks but not have the security of being in a union, or be a member of the union?
I'd rather be a member of the union.
Do you think unions are still effective today?
No, I don't think so. I think the political system has done a good job doing its best to break unions and eliminate unions and closing. A lot of corporations have been behind that too, and I think that's because they have political support behind them. So I think unions have kind of gone downhill in a big way since the old days of strong unions. Yeah.